Welcome to the HRchat podcast, bringing the best of the HR and talent communities to you.
Welcome to another episode of the HRchat podcast. I'm your host, Bill Banham, and today we are joined by the amazing, the awesome, the wonderful Jennifer McClure. Jennifer is a keynote speaker, social media influencer, executive coach, president of Unbridled Talent LLC, and CEO of the awesome DisruptHR series. Jennifer has over 25 years of experience leading human resources and talent acquisition efforts, studying of industry best practices and partnering with senior executives to improve their skills and increase their impact. Jennifer, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show today. Welcome to HRchat.
Thank you. It's actually my honor to be here. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, let's jump straight in with the first question because I could be here with you all day and we don't have that long. So starting off, tell us a bit about yourself, your career history, and how you came to be in your current roles.
I spent about 20 years in HR practitioner roles in the corporate world, so leadership and executive roles there. Everything from, starting as an HR department of one to my last role as a VP of HR for a consumer products company here in the U.S. And when we sold the company, which was actually the goal, so that was a good thing, I kind of found myself without a job at that time after, almost 20 years. And at that time felt I wanted to start my own business, but got a lot of great advice from people that I wasn't ready. So went into executive recruiting instead and kind of learned more of the business development and how to, live on that 100% commission kind of world. That was the biggest challenge that people said I would face, is kind of going from the corporate regular salary to having my own business, but being a part of a team and learning that side of the business from some great people. Spent about 4 years doing that, and then in 2010 went out on my own. I primarily do speaking and training, so that's about 80% of what I do. The other 20% or so with Unbridled Talent is coaching and writing and consulting with companies in talent strategies, leadership development, or personal branding.
Awesome.
In 2015, kind of added on DisruptHR to those responsibilities. So my days are pretty full.
You're a very busy lady. We're gonna get to DisruptHR later. Our readers will probably be very aware that we absolutely love the whole DisruptHR series. We write about it, we talk about it all the time. We try and attend and partner with different events, but we'll get to that later. Before we do, tell me a bit more about Unbridled Talent and what it does.
So again, most of what I do, I speak probably 50, 60 times a year at events, whether that's conferences or associations or corporate events. And again, on the topics of talent strategy, leadership development, career development. From that, again, turns into some opportunities to work with companies maybe in those areas, and then also work with some executives on improving their skills and continuing to grow in their careers. I do write for publications like Career Builder and some other industry online publications, as well as my own blog and the DisruptHR blog. So kind of a real student of the talent acquisition and leadership spaces, and try to teach and share what I know. So that's the bulk of what I do, is really doing everything I can to stay current with what's going on in the industry and the trends that are out there, and be connected to the people who are really doing things so that I can highlight their work and also learn from them.
What does an average work week look like for you, Jennifer, if there's such a thing?
Yeah, I guess the question is what was average. I guess my work really goes in seasons, and it's maybe a little bit different than somebody who has a traditional kind of corporate day job, but the seasons for me are really spring and fall are very heavy travel and speaking. Everyone wants to hold a conference in April, May, or October, November, it seems. And so, usually about 3 months in the spring and fall, I'm on the road and maybe speaking sometimes 3-4 times a week at events all over the world. And that's really the piece that I love, and wish that was a 12-month-a-year thing, because I love to travel, I love to meet people, I love to learn at the events that I'm honored to be able to speak at. In the winter time and heavy summertime, not a lot of people are having those types of events. So that might be, more work with corporate clients, which is, again, not as much travel. But a lot of it is then kind of going back and both working on new talks or improving the talks that I have or fleshing out training programs, looking at my collateral and my marketing and, what needs to be redone or refreshed there, and creating new things so that I'll have those to share in the spring and fall. So it's a little bit seasonal. Right now, I finished up my last travel for 2016 last week, and so, right now, don't have anything in terms of travel for another month or so, and that will be time during the holidays to really spend reflecting and looking into preparing for 2017.
Tell me a bit more about you in terms of your personal loves and interests. I understand, for example, that you're a bit of an equestrian. What gives you the most pleasure outside of work?
Oh, it's definitely the horses, yeah. A bit of an equestrian. That's probably the best way to describe me. All passion, very little talent. I do have 3 horses, 2 horses in a foal, so they're where I spend my time when I'm in town, and would love to be able to, I say if you could work in your passion, it would be something with horses, but that definitely doesn't pay. It costs money. So I have to work to fund my passions. But I love to travel, and thankfully I get to do that as part of my job. But even before I started working for myself, I've always been kind of the master of I extend the business trip, So if I go somewhere to speak, I might stay on a couple of extra days to be able to see the world or explore something new, and that's something that I really enjoy and am blessed to be able to do in my work. So horses and travel and work, that's a lot of pretty much what describes me and how I spend my days.
If they were going to make a movie about your life, Jennifer, who would play you?
Sandra Bullock. I like her a lot, and for some reason people have said over the years that I look like her, and I have never seen that, but that is a huge honor, and I'll take it. Even if it's just the dark hair, I'll take that.
Okay, so you're obviously a very well-known speaker within talent and HR. What do you think makes for a powerful and impactful presentation?
Sure. I think it's someone who, first of all, really cares about the message that they're giving, that it's not just that I want to stand up here and talk so that you'll look at me or that it's anything about me. But, I really feel like the best speakers are those who have something to share and they just can't wait to share it. So usually that means that the message is much more than just, here's a bunch of slides with some information that you can read and I'm going to talk to you about me and what I've done for an hour. It's more about what stories can you share that help really make people be able to see what you're trying to tell them and make it memorable, but also that you're really, it's really important, I think, to have some takeaways. So even in a keynote, people want to have something that they can write down. I mean, I've learned that over the years. You just don't want to see a presentation where nobody ever picks up that pencil and starts writing something down or typing it in their computer. People want to learn, and they want to be inspired, and they want to leave there with some action that they can take. So I think the best talks really incorporate stories, action steps, a little bit of inspiration, and some how-to for people to take away.
Are there unique challenges when you're addressing an HR and talent audience compared to, say, I don't know, a group of marketing people or C-level business owners, that kind of thing?
That's a good question. I think, there are challenges with any audience, but any time that I'm speaking, let's say at a SHRM conference or an HR conference or event, the challenge is always that people want high-level content that they can aspire to, but the audience is a mix of everyone from entry-level professionals to, generalists to maybe even some, executives or people who focus more on strategy. So trying to craft a message that all of those different types of people with their experience can relate to and feel like they learned something, that's always a bit of a challenge. You're either giving something that's over the heads of a lot of people and they can't relate to that because they may never be someone who's interested in or wanting to work on strategy. or it may be too low level if you just talk about the day-to-day tasks of HR. So it's always a bit of a dance to make sure that you're crafting something that everyone feels like they're getting something and can take away something from.
Okay, now we are going to turn our attention more towards the wonderful, awesome, fantastic Disrupt HR series.
How do you really feel?
Jennifer, I've been really fortunate. I've attended a few of them now. I've attended several of the Disrupt HR Torontos, of course, Disrupt HR Buffalo, Disrupt HR Cayman. I've got a good sense of different events, but they all sort of follow a similar format, which we'll talk about in a moment. But they are great for many, many reasons, and they're just growing, it seems, right? Everybody's hearing about them, and everybody's excited about them. So tell us a bit about Disrupt HR, how you first became involved, and how, from what you've seen, it's evolved over the last few years. And maybe, if you can, give us some insights into what's happening in 2017.
Sure. Well, Disrupt HR started here in Cincinnati in 2013. A friend of mine, Chris Ostich, who is, I call him a serial entrepreneur. He doesn't like that moniker. He said it makes it sound like he's crazy, but in the sense of the fact that he's somebody who, I love to talk to, because you can't talk to him without him writing down everything and getting inspired and leaving that meeting with how you can start a company. So he's founded several companies and is someone who just is really, I think, that classic idea person who can take ideas and run with them. And so we would typically meet a couple of times a year. At the time, he had founded an HR technology company called Black Book HR, which is now a company called Talmetrics. And just we're chatting about kind of what each of us were doing, and this was mid-2013, and just sharing, kind of what was new and upcoming. And Black Book HR had been selected for some awards at the HR Technology Conference, and he was saying, I just wish more people knew about us. We have Fortune 100 clients. We've got a really great product, but even in Cincinnati, people aren't really familiar with us and what we do. And my kind of wish list was, I speak at all these conferences and events, and they absolutely serve a need. And the content, though, is pretty much the same. And that's fine, because people, don't necessarily hear the same content all over the world. But I really felt like there was an opportunity to do something different, and wished that there was a way to create maybe an event and bring people here to Cincinnati. So he actually left that meeting and, again, got his wheels rolling and his ideas. And he was the community organizer at the time for Ignite events in Cincinnati. So Ignite events, if you're not familiar with those, they're the 5-minute talks with 20 slides that advance every 15 seconds with people from the community who talk about an idea. So a little bit of TED, but a little bit different format. And so he came up with the idea to create an event in our space that took that Ignite format and, again, reached out to people from the broader community. And we put on our first event here in Cincinnati in December 2013. So that was the beginning, really both of us having different wants, but he was able to, as he often does, put that into, action form and make something happen. And a friend of mine, Mary Faulkner, who lives in Denver, attended that event and afterwards asked if she could do maybe something similar in Denver. So Chris and his team worked with her on the format and how to set it up. And somewhere along there, I believe Toronto came across it and also took the format from Chris and his team and began to put on events in Toronto. And I believe Cleveland was fourth. And from there, there was a few events here and there, maybe over 2014, and then in 2015, Chris and I decided that, this was something that people really wanted to do. The talks coming out of the events were really good, and maybe to look at how we could actually make this a thing, other than just people hearing about it and maybe, tossing over some papers to them, but helping people to really build a community. So mid-2015, we formed an actual partnership, began to really publicize the talks, built out our website, created, community information and materials and opportunities for the organizers to collaborate. And since that time, as of today, we're at 65 cities and 13 countries across the world. And I probably have 5 conversations a week with people who are interested in starting communities. So I expect that at least for the next unforeseeable future at least, that it will continue to grow. So I'm very excited about that.
65 cities now. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness me. Wow, that is exploding. That's incredible. Congratulations.
Yeah, I think it's, the really cool thing for me about DisruptHR is that it's not something that I've done or that Chris has done. We've provided the framework and the encouragement. It really is. All of the events are volunteer organized, community led events. They, do need to follow the format. There is a license so that we can, make sure that people are able to maximize attendance at their events. But the output is really the talks. Again, we steal a little bit for all these people. We format nights, and of course, Ted has the ideas we're sharing kind of tagline, and I think for me that's what DisruptHR is about. It's an opportunity for people who maybe never would either get invited or consider getting on a stage at a conference or event for an hour-long talk or something like that, but they have an idea to share and they're willing to get up and do that in 5 minutes, and the format means that if you mess up, that's okay, and hopefully that just adds entertainment and humor to the event. And we've seen some really great talks and ideas come from people who never have spoken and may never speak on a stage again, and I think that's great.
You mentioned the format there. Would you say that it's the format, it's the idea that, there's 12, 13 speakers, 5 minutes each? That's what makes the DisruptHR brand very distinct from other events out there, or would you say there's more to it than that?
I think I'm learning as this community grows that there are some things. I've always said we're DisruptHR, so we don't have rules. But I've had to come back to we have to really protect that format because we have a community of disruptors out there, and so. If you look at some of the early talks in particular, there are people who don't use any slides or go over 5 minutes. And what we've had to really kind of put our foot down and say is a DisruptHR event is 5-minute talks with 20 slides that advance every 15 seconds. There are, people probably, I talk to 2 or 3 people a month who would like to maybe take the DisruptHR brand and put it on top of a conference, a regular conference or event, or, add it on to something. And we just have to, I think, be very careful that if I go to DisruptHR in Toronto and then I see there's a DisruptHR event in Singapore, that I kind of know what to expect. So it's like McDonald's or Starbucks. If I go to McDonald's in Cincinnati or if I go to McDonald's in Paris, I pretty much know what's going to be on the menu and that the experience is going to be the same. There are going to be some unique things relatable to that community or location, but I know when I see McDonald's what I'm going to get. And so we're trying to really figure out how to make that the same with DisruptHR while still allowing people to have their own flavor and culture in the events. So for example, we've had DisruptHR Montreal and DisruptHR Grenoble, France. Both of those events are in French. I'm excited. Those are our first non-English speaking cities. But obviously, they wanted them to be called DisruptRH because that's the way it is in French. So those are things that I think we can bend on. But the format is what we're really trying to keep consistent amongst the events.
You talk a lot about the importance of building and maintaining professional relationships. In fact, if one goes to your LinkedIn profile, it's one of your first statements that you make. How has this attitude of being open and receptive to the general community helped you grow the DisruptHR series across the world?
That's a good question. I think, just in general in my career, I wouldn't be where I am today or have any of the success I have if it wasn't for the relationships that I have. People who have encouraged me, taught me, referred me, provided me business opportunities, et cetera. And so, certainly I want to make sure that I give back to my community as well. And so I try to maintain the same attitude with people who approach me and ask for help or advice or mentoring, to do as much of that as I can. In terms of how that's kind of taken DisruptHR, certainly with my involvement, and that's a lot of what I share online and talk about. Many of my relationships are like-minded people, and so many of them have actually been people who have organized communities or shared the messages, getting it out to the broader community. So I think that's just the benefit of relationships in general. We kind of help each other, give each other a leg up, and then when somebody does something good that's worth sharing, share it out to our broader networks. And I don't think DisruptHR would be where it is today without the relationships that I have, that Chris has, that each of our organizers and speakers have, and people in the community. Every day, again, when I talk to somebody who's interested in organizing a community, one of the first questions I'll ask is, well, how did you hear about DisruptHR? And 90% of the time they got forwarded a video or came across something online from somebody in their network who shared it. And so the message gets out because people share it with people that they care about, and then those people, many of them, take it and share it with their networks as well.
So you are a social media influencer, and because of that, I bet you get approached all the time by people who want to have you espousing the virtues of their products, their tools, their software, whatever it might be. Could you maybe offer 2 or 3 big no-nos and maybe 2 or 3 appropriate ways to approach a social media influencer in the space if one is looking to get a positive response and to build a relationship with you?
I think it's a challenge. As I said, I've benefited from so many people who helped me, and I'm sure I didn't have a existing relationship with many of those people when they originally invested in me. So it's a challenge. I think the common wisdom is you build the relationship first before you start asking someone to do something for you. But it's hard, even for someone like myself and anybody. I think I get emails. I just went through my email this morning, and there's 2 or 3 in there of people who want to have coffee or an hour-long phone call or want to tell me about their product. And if I did that full time, I wouldn't get any work done. So I have to find ways to still try to help those people, but I can't give my personal time to everyone. That one of the emails was somebody who's wanting to move to the U.S. and his proposition is that he does the same thing I do, and so let's partner up. I don't know you.
Yeah.
We may be in the same space, but that's a huge ask of somebody. I want to partner with you in your business that you've spent 7 years of developing. It's just I get that if you don't ask, you won't get. But I just think there's that we're missing a little bit of, there is time that needs to be spent in developing the relationship. So how can you do that with someone who's a quote social media influencer or just an influencer in the space in general? Read their stuff, share their stuff, tell them why you like what they've written or shared. In my case, I share my whole self online. So like my pictures of my horses, ask me how Nala's doing, do something so that, you start to come up on my radar. Would be one way. Another way would be to start really doing great work yourself. A lot of the people that I look at in my network are people that I've noticed, that I reached out to, that I started sharing their content, that I started saying, hey, I really like what so-and-so's doing. And so the relationship was built that way because I shared, I invested in them. And I think, it's a two-way street. As an influencer, there will be people reaching out to you, and they need to really invest in the relationship with you. But at the same time, you got to be keeping your eyes out for companies or individuals that you think are doing great things and can share. And once, some of that relationship is built, then I think there's opportunities to begin saying, how can we help each other? But to start out the conversation with how can we help each other, it just almost never works, unfortunately.
Okay, so let's move away from the social media influencers and let's talk about speakers. I mean, obviously there's a lot of overlap, but to your point, some of the speakers at DisruptHR, maybe it's their first time speaking. Maybe they're they're not super prominent people yet. But can you list 4 or 5 speakers that you've seen at one of the DisruptHR events that had a big impact on you, and tell me why that was?
Yeah, and I think that's always a great question, and I ask. When I do organizer profiles on our DisruptHR blog, I ask them that question as well, and they're like, I can't choose. For me, right now, I think we have over 600 videos that are online on our DisruptHR channel, and I'm actually working my way through all of those so that I can curate the content. So I've probably watched 200, 300 of the videos now. I don't even know how many. And every day I'm like, oh, wow, that was just a great talk. I just love it. But the ones that kind of stick out for me now, and again, it's not to the exclusion of many of the others, is one of the, the first event that I attended outside of Cincinnati was in Denver, and a guy named Greg Roche, who I believe it was his first public speaking event, gave a talk called Idea, Sex, and Talent Management. And it was and is, I think, everything that a DisruptHR talk should be. A little bit edgy, a lot funny, taking a concept and really fleshing it out in a great presentation. And it's still one of my favorite talks today, talking about, how we should really be sharing more ideas in order to innovate and disrupt the future of work. So it's the first one that always comes to mind for me. And then, there was a DisruptHR Toronto event, the second one, that almost every talk there was one of my favorites, but two that really come to mind. Ryan Porter, who gave a talk called Wolves in the Workplace. And again, great delivery, great talk, but the idea that we are excluding people who don't have college degrees from the hiring process and how that doesn't make sense. And he equated that to the wolves being taken out of the ecosystem in Yellowstone and then reintroduced. I think, again, a great idea, really in a compelling way. Another talk from that event, and her name just escapes me, but it was about mentorship versus sponsorship. So really kind of flipping the idea on its head of that we really push mentoring in the workplace, but what we should be pushing is people who actually take ownership of someone's career and sponsor them. And she had some great stats and information about how sponsorship is more effective than mentorship. And then I guess a fourth one, just to kind of, Vadim Lieberman, who has spoken 3 times at DisruptHR New York and will be speaking tonight at their 7th event, I believe. Vadim's event, he's got 3 talks out there online, and all of them are funny. He does a really great job. You can tell he's practiced the presentations. He's not a speaker. He's a practitioner. But he really takes ownership of giving a great talk that's fun and entertaining and also a bit intriguing. He uses great visuals, and I think he just owns the DisruptHR format, and that's why he keeps getting invited back to DisruptHR New York.
It would be remiss of me not to do a little bit of a shout out to a couple of MCs of DisruptHR events that I've really enjoyed seeing too. Those would be Tim Baker, our very own Tim Baker, and also Chris Bailey over at the Cayman event. That was pretty awesome, and that they helped things move along and kept it very entertaining and fun. Jen, we are coming to the end of this particular episode, and I'm very sad about that. I could sit here with you all day, I think. But before we wrap up, how can our listeners learn more about you?
Sure, you can find me on the interwebs at unbridledtalent.com is my website. On Twitter at Jennifer McClure, so my name, just all one word. And I'm on other social media platforms as well, but those are certainly the places where you can find more about me. You can also find content that I share and certainly curating over on DisruptHR.co. and on Twitter at disrupt_HR.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you for being our guest today. This has been a great interview.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate again the opportunity and also your support of DisruptHR events all over the world.
Long may it continue. And that takes us to the end of this particular podcast. So thank you very much for listening. And until next time, this has been your host, Bill Banham. And the show is called HRchat, brought to you by the HR Gazette.
Thank you for listening to the HRchat podcast, brought to you by the HR Gazette.